Hello and welcome to a H&L map for La Candela Viva. Just going to connect up here. And we're going to make a hook and lift map. And that is going to be where we map out the hooks of the track, how the hooks develop, and map out the lifts of the track. And that is basically how the producer uses different sounds to manipulate the energy levels of the track. And so lifts would be something like a ride. You know, you put in a ride when you want to increase the energy. Sometimes it could be like shakers. But at the end of the day, the story of a track is defined by or determined by how the hooks develop. And so that's kind of the primary interest here with an hook and lift map, which is to just understand arrangement, right? How do we control the listener's attention across a track, and how do we keep them engaged? How do we surprise them? How do we excite them? How do we make them absolutely love our track? How do we make DJs want to play our tracks in the biggest venues in the world? How does our track race up to the charts? And I believe that arrangement is definitely one of the most important aspects in making that happen. So we are interested in development, and specifically the hooks, how they develop, and the lifts, how the energy develops over time. And so let's get started. I'm going to create some tracks right away. So this is going to be beat. We're not going to be breaking down the drums of the track. We're going to be taking those for granted. But if anything kind of comes in that like, you know, lifts the track, like a big open hat or a ride or a shaker or something like that, we'll go ahead and map it out. And mostly we're going to be paying attention to the structure of the track, the hooks, and the lifts. And this is a great example of the HD2 formula. It's really a perfect example of the HD2 formula, and I'll point out what that means as we're going along here. But beat, and then we're also going to create an edit map. And edits are just going to be tiny little things that the producer does that we don't really need to keep track of in a detailed way, but it does create moments of excitement when you have like little things at the end of the 8 bars and stuff like that. So I'll just kind of make a note when those happen. Okay, so let's get started. Here we go through the intro. All right, so far, what do we have? We have just the intro, okay? DJ lead-in. Not a big deal, but I think producers overcomplicate this, so it's nice to just kind of take a look at it and keep things simple. So here we start off with the full beat, actually. It has the kick, the full kick in there. Sometimes you could just start it off with a high pass. And you can hear this kind of underwater quality to the, let's see, full beat, perk is to the percussion, especially perk is underwater. Okay, just a little bit of like filtering there, but right away just bringing in the percussion that adds a lot of movement to the track. And so the track has a really fast, uplifting kind of feel. Just a lot, really fast moving, and so why not just introduce that right from the beginning, because the rest of the development is going to be based on the hooks and what comes in. And so it basically, like, there's not going to be a lot of changing or manipulation to the groove itself. The groove is pretty much going to be constant throughout, maybe with a couple lifts here and there, but not really. Most of the arrangement and the changes and the development is going to come from the sounds that are brought, the big sounds, right? The hooks that are brought in and out. And so what I'm pointing out here is that like the hooks or the groove is busy from the beginning, because it's setting the, gosh, I can't think of the word, it's setting the stage for this just being an energetic track, and you get that vibe right away. Also, the vibe that's created with the percussion is kind of thematic. We kind of have, you know, quote ethnic vocal. And so the sound selection right away from the beginning kind of hints at that kind of vibe. All right, and so really cool. And so then here in the intro, we're going to get what I call a B lift. Every single one of these sections, or we're going to go through all the sections, is can be broken down into having a clean A or B section, so an A section, and then a B section, and they're very clearly defined. Another thing we'll talk about is CLT stories, especially right here. Okay, A-B structures, and CLT stories are ways and approaches that you can structure the individual sections of the track. Okay, all right. So let's just finish up what we're talking about here. What I introduced is that there's a clean A-B in the intro. The A here is just the full beat where the percussion is underwater, and the B here. Here we get a shaker lift that comes in on the left. The percussion is more articulate. Okay. Well, I'm getting a little too detailed here, but we'll pull back in a second. But let's just listen to that. Or it could just be more percussion is added that's just a little bit more articulate. You can hear this offbeat percussion that comes in. So not very articulate. Then when we listen here, we're going to get some articulate percussion, especially that offbeat guy. And then we also have that shaker, and then we're getting the bass, introducing the bass line through a high pass. That's cool. And I love drum fills, so there we go. Awesome. And this is just going to be a little drum fill. So drum fill could be just part of like a little edit where just something happens here, right? Like there's a little break from the pattern, something happens, it just kind of warms you up for the next part. But I like keeping track of drum fills because I love drum fills. Okay, so enough with the intro. Let's now move on to the next section, which is going to be the bass drop. All right, and I might as well just finish up here and just, because this is such a good example of an HD2 formula, I might as well just introduce it from the beginning so that we can reference it as we're going along. So this is going to be break 1 or B1, and then so we have intro, bass drop, break 1, then we're going to have hook drop 1, HD1, okay, and then we're going to have the main break and build, MBB, so MBB. Then we're going to have hook drop 2, HD2. That's where the formula name comes from. And I think that stops right there. And so this is going to be HD2. And then finally, we just have our outro. Okay. And there we go. Okay, so let's just kind of look at this. Okay. So this is, again, just an absolutely perfect HD2 formula. Okay, we have an intro, bass drop, break 1, HD1, MBB, HD2, outro. Okay, intro, bass drop. Bass drop is where we just introduced the bass line. And then we move into a break. We have HD1, which is the hook drop 1. We have the main break and build. We have the hook drop 2, and we have the outro. And really quickly, let me just explain what goes on in these because we're going to see it happen. So I might as well just kind of explain what's going on. So the bass drop, you just introduced the bass line. Here you're teaching people the bass line, you're teaching people to move and groove to the track, and that's exactly what's going to happen here, you'll see. Not a lot of hooks on top because you don't want to overwhelm the listener. You need to teach them the groove, okay? That's what the bass drop's function is. You teach people the groove, they learn how to move and dance to it, okay? And then with the break, you high pass, and so you're taking away the low end of the groove, but you usually introduce something new here, the hook, something new and big. All right, so here you teach them the groove, here you're teaching them the main hook of the track, and then these two come together into HD1. So you could think of HD1 as the bass drop plus break 1, so groove plus hook equals HD2, which is a hook over, HD1, which is a hook over the groove. Okay, that's, I call that setup math. Okay, SETUP setup math, where bass drop plus break 1 equals HD1. Because HD1 is just where you bring together those two elements that were previously introduced. You bring together the groove and the hook. The groove introduced in the bass drop, then taken away in the break, and the break introduces the hook, and then they come together in HD1. Okay, that's setup math, or arrangement math, is I'll call it that too. Okay, so then we have HD1. HD1 is just where you have hooks over the groove. Really that simple. Main break and build, you take it away, so you're taking away all that excitement, you're taking away the groove, you're taking away the full presentation of the hooks, you take it away, then you build tension, letting the listener know, hey, we're gonna bring it back, and then in HD2, you give it back to them, okay? This is what I call a sandwich track. A sandwich track is basically where HD1 and HD2 are virtually identical. Sometimes you'll have what I call elevations. Elevations are where HD2 is just a little bit bigger in some way than HD1, and in this case, it's very subtle, but there's going to be more high frequency content in the drums, particularly in HD2, just to give a little bit of a lift, a little bit of an elevation. But other than that, these are pretty much structurally identical. And we'll touch on structure in just a second. And then in the outro, I mean, you just, that's it. Usually 32 bars, you have the groove for 16, you take away something in the last 16, typically it's going to be the bass line. You can even throw in a high pass, but obviously this is just the DJ lead out, okay? When outros are really subtractive and straightforward like this, I like to call them boring outros. And for me, that's a very good term because just like I said, a lot of times producers will overdo the intro. They'll overthink the intro, they'll overthink the outro. The meat of the track is this stuff, okay? This is what you should really care about. The intro and the outro should be extremely formulaic, okay? Even this stuff can be formulaic, as we're going to see. But there's a lot more fun that you can have here with the intro and the outro, you know, and creativity that you can have here with the intro and outro. Keep it simple. Just give the DJ an easy time to mix in and out of the track, and then just go ham on this stuff. So I said we're going to talk about structure. Like I said, okay, so we have these 7 sections: intro, bass drop, break 1, HD1, MB&B, HD2, outro. Okay, these 7 sections, like I said, they can be divided into a clean A-B structure. And so we'll see that a lot. So the intro we saw has an A and B. We'll look at the bass drop that has an A and B. Break 1 will have an A and B. HD1 will definitely have an A and B. Main break and build, this kind of has an A-B, clean A-B structure. What this really has is a very clean CLT story. That's another thing we'll look at when we get over here, and probably we'll mention it over here. HD2, this has a clean A-B just like HD1, and the outro even has just a clean A-B, okay? So right away we have 7 sections. Pretty much everyone can have a clean A-B section, and so that gives you a lot of structure and a lot of formula to work with when you're arranging a track. Is ask yourself, okay, what am I going to do in these individual sections? And then ask, what am I going to do in the A and the B sections for each one? And so that gives you just a way to really break things down and kind of check off boxes on what needs to happen in the track. And I'm bringing this up so much in this track because it's so well executed that I just want to highlight it, okay? And so let's keep on moving on, and let's kind of really focus on these concepts that I just introduced as we're breaking this down, okay? So coming out of the intro now, we've got the clean A-B. Okay, we just have this kind of perk that's not very articulate here. Things get a little bit bigger, right, in the B section here. We have the 16th note shaker. We have the more articulated perk, and we start to introduce the bass line with a high pass, okay? So now we're coming into the bass drop. And what do we say with the bass drop? We're just introducing the bass line. We're just teaching people the groove. That's the whole point. Let's check it out. Okay, so just kind of adding some things as we're going along here, but obviously the bass line comes in full, and that's what the whole point of the bass drop. We're just introducing the bass. Now you heard that there's a vocal that kind of starts to creep up underneath the bass drop. Now typically that happens in the B section, okay, where you're going to get this what I call trans element or transition element, okay, and that's what is going on in this track. That vocal that you hear, it's slowly coming up in volume. The low pass filter is slowly opening up on the vocal. It's a vocal rep. Okay, REP, short for repetition, because repetition in this way creates a lot of tension. It lets the listener know we're going somewhere, okay? And so this whole thing with the vocal, I call it a Vox Rep LP up. You can even see I wrote it down here on this track, okay? Vox Rep, vocal repetition, LP up, low pass up. That is an absolute classic way to introduce a vocal into a track, to kind of tease a vocal that's going to open up here in break one. I recently did John Summit's track La Danza, and he does the exact same thing, but he starts that vocal, the Vox Rep LP up in the B section of the bass drop, but it's the exact same thing. Both of these have like a Spanish vocal. I'm sorry if it's not Spanish, but to me it sounds like that. And so it's just, yeah, both of those tracks have the same thing. It's always the same, not just these two tracks, but in every track, it's pretty much the same stuff every time, okay? And here, we're introducing the vocal with the Vox Rep LP up through the bass drop. In this track, we're starting it away at the beginning of the bass drop, which is cool. I like that. It's a little bit different, okay? And then, but for example, in John's track, La Danza, it creeps up through the B section, which is more textbook, I would say, okay? And then it opens up here in the main break. So let's, I'm sorry, not in the main break, but in break one. So let's get back to the bass drop. What do we have? We have the beat, we have the bass, and we have this Vox Rep LP up. Is there anything else that's worth noting? And so there's a little bit of a hat lift. I'm not sure if I even want to make a new track for this. Let's just kind of do like just a hat lift, okay? All right, and then what happens in the B section? Here we have a bigger hat lift, so we're getting what I call a B lift. So, of course, with the bass drop, we have an A section, then a B section, and then typically there's going to be some kind of B lift in the bass drop, and so that could be a little checkbox you add. And so here he's just giving us a bigger hat. And you could hear actually the bass is slowly opening, okay? And same through here. I'm just going to put cont. Continues to slowly open. And we have a snare roll that gains up. This is going to be a theme through the track that's kind of just, that's going to be one of the main trans elements of the track, is just this snare roll. Now we're getting the same drum fill. All right. So you can see what's going on. So with the bass drop, we have a clean A, B. We have the A section. We have the B section with a clear hat lift. The vocal opens up even more. The filter opens up and it starts to close again. Okay. And then I think it starts to open through here. And there we go. Okay. So now we enter the break. We're going to get, let's see. So with the beat, we have the tops and the perk. What's going on with the bass? So nothing going on really with the bass. That's just cut. And then we obviously have a main vocal. Now I'm going to create a new track for this because I like to see how many different ways the vocal is kind of used in a track. Okay, so here we have a Vox Rep LP up, but that's a different kind of vocal. Even though it's from the same vocal, it's a different vocal technique. And so here, this is just going to be the main line. Okay, and so I want to just keep track of different ways the vocals are used, even though it's the same vocal. All right, so here we have a little bit of a flute coming up that's playing the melody. That's going to be the melody that comes in the second half of the drop. So they're foreshadowing or seeding the melody before it comes in its full form later on. So really cool, and that's cool because a layperson won't really pick up on this. I mean, some people certainly will hear this melody here, but they're mostly focused on that vocal. They're not really searching around for sounds like we are as producers. They're just focused on what's right in front of them. And the vocal is what's right in front of them. And so kind of tucking this in there is a really cool, sneaky technique, because then later on when we get the full melody in the second half of the drop, it kind of feels familiar, even though maybe we don't know why, because it was just tucked in earlier. So a little bit of foreshadowing and seeding there. Clever technique, very common. There's also a bit of a string. I like that. I'm just going to keep note of that. And I'm just writing SD for sound design stuff. I like to differentiate. You know, you have Vox hooks, you have sound design hooks. String is really technically like a music hook, but I'm just going to put sound design, whatever. So here we go. So just like the intro, we're getting a bass lift here with the high pass bass in the B section. So just like every other section in this track, we're going to have a nice A and B. So the A section for the break is just going to be chill. Okay, we're just introducing the vocal. That's all. Okay, cool. And then so the B section of the break one here is just a little bit of a build. Okay, it's not an epic crazy build, but he's got some definite build elements. There's typically 5 build elements. Number 1 is they go like this. Okay, rep, roll, rise, grow, and pipo. Okay, so in the build, what is the rep? Let's listen. And so the main hook isn't really repeating. Yes, it's repeating its phrase, but a vocal rep is where, like this, okay? This would be like a proper vocal rep in through the bass drop. That's like repeating a segment of the vocal, okay? And that's what I mean by rep. So the only rep that I really hear going on is just the little flute melody on the right. Bum, 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 bum. Kind of doing what the bass is doing. The bass is obviously repeating, but it's a repetitive bass line to begin with. Okay, so rep, roll, obviously we have a snare roll, rise. Things are rising, right? There's some... You can hear a general high passing too, which just kind of gives the rising feeling that the track is lifting off the ground. Rep, roll, rise, grow. Grow is where things grow into a bigger space. Rise is where you just have this general lifting feeling. Things are going up, but grow is where you have just things are getting bigger. They're expanding. 2 different emotions, and typically 2 different things that you do to create those feelings. And grow is a lot of times just going to be like a reverb, okay? And so you can hear that vocal going into a reverb, and there's your grow element. And then finally you have a pipo, which stands for pattern interrupt pay off. So pattern interrupt is where you have the pattern that you establish, which is a building pattern. That's with the snare roll, with the growing, with all those other elements, with the reps, with the rise. Those are all establishing a pattern of building. And then at some point you stop that, okay? You interrupt the pattern, and then you deliver some kind of payoff, okay? So let's listen if that happens. And so in this case, you don't have a pipo, but that's okay, because in the break one, for example, you don't need all the build elements. You just need a couple. You need to have the build sensation, but you don't need to go all out like you typically do in the main break and build. And so even if you don't have all 5 build elements in break one, that's okay. You don't need them. You just need to create a general sense, a kind of a more subtle sense of building, and that's exactly what's going on here. And so I actually would call this a momentum build or a momentum transition, because a lot of times in tracks you'll have that pipo where the pattern stops, you deliver a payoff that's exciting, and then boom, you go into the drop. But in this case, what it's doing is it's like kind of like a charging rhino or like a freight train. It's just full steam ahead, doesn't ever take a break. It just explodes into the drop. And so I like to think of those and call those momentum transitions. And that's kind of what we have going on here. Kind of rare, but I really like them when I hear them, because it just keeps going. It doesn't stop, and then it just explodes. So these sound like different vocal samples. I'm going to put this on a new track, and I'm just going to differentiate these by their sections. So we'll do Vox, main line, and this is going to be HD1 for now. And we'll probably, we'll just put it in, we'll just write drops. Okay, there we go. Okay, there's a little bit of a lift that happens here at the second 8 bars, which is a tambourine shaker that comes in on the right. There could be some other lifts, but that was one that I just immediately noticed. There's also some really big syncopated drums that are in here now. So let's just call these big syncos. Okay, so syncopate, let's see if I can point them out. So right here, okay, right before this bar right here, you'll hear this. Oh, right here, my bad. See that big percussion hit? It also plays right here, okay? So it's playing in just every kind of at the half bar points. Right, and there's other little things like that too, but I'm just going to put a general kind of category here. We're just, again, we're interested in how things lift over time, and these two things are relatively subtle if you're not really focused or paying attention to them. And so, yeah, just, you know, we're slowly building the groove. I like to think of it as slowly building the magic show. You're just kind of subtly increasing things before, boom, your final reveal, okay? The big magic trick here at the end. And over time here, you're just kind of building the magic show. And these are the little things that are lifting the energy, helping us build the magic show so that later on that final reveal is mind-blowing. Okay, so here we go. All right, so we have the flute coming up here, and that is just gaining up. So this is a little bit of a trans element. Okay, so we have here, we're just kind of chilling. If we're looking at this section, these two sections, we have we're just kind of chilling, and then we lift the energy a little bit with the tambourine shaker, with maybe some other sounds too. The bass starts opening a little bit, getting ready to transition into the B section of the drop, which is being teased. It's being teased by the flute here, because this next section is going to be the sound design melody. So again, just zooming out, we have the hook drop. The hook drop is where we put hooks over it. We've already taught them the groove. We've already then introduced what the main hook is. So we can now see right away that hook drop 1 is simply bass drop plus break 1. That gives you HD1. Okay, that is basic arrangement math or setup math. And so the reason why I call it setup math is because all this section, the intro, the bass drop, the break 1, this is just setup for the track, okay? The setup for the main story. The main story of the track is going to be HD1, main break and build HD2. That's what the main story of the track is. This is just setup, just kind of teasing the elements, teaching us the groove, teaching us the hook, bringing them together in HD1, okay? And so again though, next step is understanding that sections have the A, B. So here we're talking about the A section so far, and the A section of the hook drop is just defined by this vocal. Okay, that's it. Okay, we're chilling. We're introducing the vocal over the groove here. It's amazing. It's awesome. We love it. We're ready for something new as we get into the next 8-bar section. So what the producers are doing is they're lifting the energy a little bit just to give us a little bit more excitement as a listener. And at the same time, they're going to start transitioning by opening the bass line up a little bit, and then by transitioning with the flute. The sound design melody of the flute is kind of creeping up underneath, and previewing what's to come. And then we're also probably going to get a nice little edit section right here, as you can see. Okay, so all these things are just absolutely perfectly executed. So this is a massive drum fill. So I just wanted to see if that showed up anywhere else, but this is the first time he's using that drum fill. And I know he's going to use that as the main drum fill here into HD2, and I know it's going to show up in HD2 again. I was just interested to know where he used it. I'm going to skip ahead. I want to see if he uses it over here as well. He does. Okay, so he's going to use it here, 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 and here. So all the most important, he's using this drum fill at almost all the most important moments of the track. Okay, the only one he's not using it in is right here into HD1. And I guess he just doesn't want to give it away there. Okay, he's just introducing it here. Anyway, so that's just fun for me. I was just interested in where that was being used. So let's keep going here. We're now moving into the B section of the main of HD1. I'm just going to define HD1A here, and this equals just vocal. That's it. Okay, and then HD1, the B section is just going to be sound design. Okay. I'll just say sound design. Yeah, SD, sound design. That's it. It's really that clear, right? Like trying to just think to yourself when you're making a track or laying out a drop, if you can keep the higher level clarity clear, if you can keep the higher level of what's going on clear, man, it just makes it a lot easier to kind of organize your track, and then you kind of work down from there. And then from there, that's where you get the CLT stories. So at the very top level, that's what we opened the video with. The very top level, we have the arrangement structure, okay, the HD2 formula, intro, bass drop, break 1, HD1, MB&B, HD2, and outro. Okay, a level down would be the A-B structures, so each of these sections can be divided into A-B. A level down from that's going to be your CLT stories, and we kind of hinted at it. So before I would say, you know, here we're just chilling. So a CLT story stands for chill, lift, and trans. Okay, so here we're just chilling. Here we're lifting a little bit and we're transitioning. So the CLT story of the A section here is chill and then lift trans. Okay, that's it. And then it's going to be the exact same thing right here. Okay. But we're going to be chilling with the sound design melody. We don't need to go anywhere yet because we're just listening. We're just enjoying that melody, and then we will start to lift and transition here in the second 8 bars. But that's what a CLT story is. It's very simple. Okay, so within the A-B structures, what can you do? Okay, well, let's just have a chill section, and we need to start to transition. Okay, well, if you're chilling, you obviously are going to have your groove, maybe, and you're going to have a hook, right? Typically, if you're in a proper hook drop. And then you let that go for 8 bars. And then in the next 8, what are you going to do? Okay, well, we're not chilling anymore. Something needs to happen. We're going to lift the energy, and we're going to start to transition. So what do you need to do? That means you need to have elements that help you lift the energy and elements that help you transition. Okay, and so what lifts the energy here? We have a tambourine shaker. We've got some maybe other percussion sounds or something that comes in, other high frequency stuff. And the transition elements are going to be like that flute melody that comes up. The bass starts to open. So these are all things that are serving extremely simple functions that help manipulate the energy over time and tell the listener what's going on and what to expect. Okay, and transition is always going to tell the listener we're going into a new section. We're going somewhere new. And that's exactly what happens. We're transitioning into the B section of HD1, and that's going to be a new hook. So that's going to be the sound design melody here. So I'm just going to do sound design main. That's it. Main hook. Okay. Bam. Okay, and so does that wrap up what I was talking about? I was talking about the levels of analysis. So we have the arrangement layout, the formula, HD2 formula. Then we have AB structures below within the sections themselves. Then we have CLT stories, okay? And then I think we'll stop there, okay? Because I want to kind of keep it on those higher level things. And so we can continue down, and there's other videos that talk about that stuff, but let's just try to keep it up top. So let's now go into the next section. Okay, so let's back up. So we obviously have the beat, we've got the bass, and then what we have, the main things are going to be the groove. That's going to be the beat, the bass, and then the hooks. And so those are the main things. We've got our groove, obviously, and the hook now is going to be the main hook here. And so I'm just trying to keep track of some of the little things that are going on as well. But let's just check this out. Okay, here's a breakdown of the main hook. Okay, cool. So what I wanted to point out is basically the way that I hear the sound design melody is that it's just really 3 calls and a response. So you have do 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 do. So basically call, 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 response. Okay, and so that's kind of how it's laid out. Now, it's cool because right here we have a little bit of some ghost notes, I guess you can call them, that just add a little bit of interest. But for me, like the kind of skeleton of this hook is just call, 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 response. And by the way, these are not the right notes. I'm just drawing out the general contour of the melody. But anyway, I just wanted to map that out. A little bit of a detail. Let's keep going. So here we're getting a lift. I called this an octave layer. I think maybe it's just popping up an octave. Okay. We have some vocals here. Okay, they're happening at that 4-bar mark, the 6-bar mark, and then there's a reverse vocal at the 8-bar mark that kind of takes us into the next section, acting as a mini trance. Okay, we're getting a string on top, so we're getting another lift over here. Okay, and so like I said, this is going to be a chill, this is going to be a lift in a trance. And so here we're just chilling, listening to the melody. Here we're going to lift the energy and then we're going to transition. So let's hear if there's any, I'm just going to assume these continue. Let's hear if there's any other lifts that are happening over here. So the bass is definitely opening, that's just, and then I hear that string. So those are the things I immediately notice. So we'll just keep track of those. And then obviously the octave leap on the sound design thing, but those are 3 major lifts. The bass opening is more of a transition, and then we have a lift with the octave jump, and we have a string, which is definitely a lift as well. So just lifting the energy. And so chill, lift, trans, chill, lift, trans. That's the basic CLT story of this, of HD1. And so there's these kind of things that are just kind of playing what the bass is playing, this kind of like these ethnic instruments. I'm just making a note here that it just, everything feels like it's underwater. Okay, so we definitely have, let's see, so this is in the break. Let's just put this right there. So I'm going to put a low pass feels underwater. There we go. Okay, and then here we have the string just kind of swirling on top while everything else feels like it's kind of, well, mostly everything else feels like it's underwater. And so these things are gaining up. So you can hear the boom, 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 boom. That's playing that's the bass line, but some other parts are kind of chiming in. So I'm just putting a little MIDI clip here that's just capturing those sounds here. Okay, so now we have the vocal comes back in full. It's not underwater anymore. We have the flute coming in. Okay, these guys are continuing to support the bass melody. So we'll get rid of that. And then we also have the bass start to come in. And so the bass is coming in too. So I'll just put this like gains up. Okay, that kind of wide bass level. And there's also a sub that kind of comes in. Feels like it comes in early. So right here you could see. Let's start it from back here and let's see where that sub comes in. And you can see it's very slowly gaining up there. I just put my mouse right here because that's kind of the level that it came in at. And you can see it start to slowly creep up almost about 6 dB so far. So I'm just going to put this in here and this just kind of gains up slowly. And so we'll just copy this over. And so just a little bit of a build sub, just to create almost kind of like an ominous kind of feel. That's the feeling I always get from that, which is good because that ominous feeling builds tension and drama, which is exactly what you want to do here in the story of the track. Here you're giving it to them, you're showing them the hook, there you take it away, you want to create some drama, and then you give it back, build some tension. And so having these kinds of subs here, it gives that feeling, you know, it's just kind of dramatic, it's just kind of ominous. And nice. Okay, so now we're getting a proper vocal rep, okay? So listen to how the vocal just starts repeating in segments, right? Not the full thing, just little segments of the vocal. And so it also has what I call an acceleration rep, which is a vocal repeating over faster and faster segments, okay? Because it accelerates at the rate at which it repeats. All right, and so then it chops down even more as we get closer to the end. And then it gets even faster. Okay, there we go, and then that's where it stops. So we're going to get our pipo, and we'll break that down in a second. But I just wanted to point out proper vocal repetition. It's not something that we had over here in break 1 that I pointed out. See, there we're getting the full phrase, but here we're getting a proper vocal rep, and that's what a rep is in a build, is where you're taking something that you've had already before and you start repeating segments of it, and that's what. Okay, and you can definitely hear some white noise up effects, so I'm going to do up there just to get some effects going. So gains up, there we go. You can even hear the flute isn't playing its full melody. It's just playing the calls. It's just going bump, 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 bump. So I'm just going to map that out here. It's just bump. Okay, and that's all it's doing. It's just repeating that over and over. So, boom. Actually, I could just loop around it like that. There we go. So let's see what happened to the sub, okay? So I'm going to start it right here, and then we'll go open up the spectrum analyzer and see if it cuts right there. Just lower. It's playing a different note up here, but it's going back down to the bottom, but it's definitely shrunk in volume. It got up to about like -18, I think. And yeah, so... There we go. It cuts right here. Okay, so this is where the sub cuts. And we can hear it too, but I just want to show you in the spectrum analyzer. So... So you can hear those crashes. I like to call those crash rolls, where you go psh, 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 psh. Okay, so let's just keep track of where those crashes are. Okay, and then they just kind of die out around here. Okay. But you can see at this 4-bar mark, that's where things really start to accelerate. So here we have the vocal kind of coming through, and then at this 4-bar mark, that's where the sub drops out, that's where the crash roll starts to pick up, that's where the vocal repetition starts to pick up. Let's see what else goes on. So things really start to cut out too around here. All right, cool. So now we can really see the elements of a build, which again are rep, roll, rise, grow, and pipo. So rep, what do we have? Okay, we have lots of cool repetitions. We have the flute repeating with this simple melody, right? Just the calls, no responses. So we have that rep. Okay, a rep really means hook rep too. The hooks need to repeat. So that flute is repeating. We're getting an acceleration rep in the vocal. So not just a rep, but an acceleration rep. Pointed that out. So that's rep. What about roll? Obviously we're getting a snare roll. I like to think of the crash as a roll too, where it just kind of accelerates as well. You can think of it as a rep, right? These aren't like extremely precise concepts. They're just labels I've given to things. But we got the crash roll, we've got the snare roll, we have the risers, obviously that... Okay, there's definitely probably some white noise in there that's rising. We have the grow, things are going out into a reverb. You can just feel the space is a lot bigger. Okay, that vocal's definitely getting washed out right there. Oh, and then we have that awesome big drum fill, which is happening. Okay, so that's that big drum fill. And so rep, roll, rise, grow, we covered all those. And then finally we have pipo, and that's pattern, interrupt, payoff. Okay, now this happens really quick. Typically you'll have one that happens over a bar, but this one happens real fast. So so the pattern, interrupt, what is the pattern and how does it get interrupted? So the pattern is just that build pattern, right? Okay, and so the first thing to look for is when does the snare roll stop? Okay, that's typically going to be the moment the pattern interrupt happens, and that's exactly what happens. So the snare roll stops, and that's going to be your pattern interrupt. A bunch of other things kind of like fade down as that snare comes to its peak. Okay, and then we get our payoff, which is just that final vocal. Okay, and so this is the vox pipo. ba-da-da-na-na. So the snare roll stops. We have that drum fill. That's kind of connecting the end of the pattern into that kind of payoff section. And so interesting. I think it's really cool. But strictly, the pattern interrupt is when that snare roll stops, and then the payoff is when that vocal plays. And then we have that drum roll that's kind of playing over both of them, which is a cool little complexity there. But you got you got the pipo, okay? And you can even call, I mean, even this drum fill in a way is a pipo. I would technically call it like a which is like just a pre-drop sound. And this payoff here is a pre-drop sound, but I call it a payoff because it's a hook, right? Like that's what you're paying off, what everybody's waiting for ultimately. But it's also technically a pre, so it's the thing that happens right before the drop. So we have that vocal as the pre, we have the drum fill as the pre, okay? But the 5 elements of the build are rep, roll, rise, grow, and pipo, and we've got all those boxes checked. And just again to reiterate, and when you're back here in break 1, you don't need to check off all those boxes. If you do check off all the boxes, then you know, it's not the end of the world, but like you really want to create this to be that big dramatic moment. You don't need as much drama back here, okay? If you're interested, one track that does check all those boxes in the build is La Danza by John Summit. And that's just fresh on my mind because I recently did that, but it's also very similar to this track in the kind of vibe and the hook that was chosen and the layout. Both of these are perfect, both of those tracks are perfect HD2 formulas, okay? But his, in the build of his break here in break 1, he checks off all those boxes of the build. And here in this track, we're checking off all the boxes just here in MBB. Okay, so let's now go into the final hook. I'm just going to copy everything from the first one over because this is what I call a sandwich track, and a sandwich track is pretty much where HD1 and HD2 are identical. There could be a little bit of an elevation in HD2 over HD1, and I think that's what's going on here too. There's a little bit of like higher frequency stuff that's going on, but pretty much the layout and structure is identical. And so let's see, zooming back out here, let's look at the MBB one last time, okay? Because I told you this is a good example of a CLT story. So let's walk through that CLT story. So here what we do is, this is called a cliff dive. Okay, a lot of times in tracks you'll have another section here, so there'll be a 32 bar main break and build. This is just a 24 bar main break and build. And a 32 bar break and build, what you'll typically have is you'll have another section that's right here, okay? And what that section does is it helps you step down into the basement of the track. The basement of the track is the lowest point of the track, and you can clearly see that the basement of this track is right here. And you can feel it, right? It's that subterranean kind of, that underwater feel. That's the basement. That is the lowest point of the track. And a cliff dive is where you come out of like the drop and you just cliff dive right into the basement. You just go straight down. You do a massive step. I don't even want to call it a step down. You're cliff diving down into the basement of the track. And if you're going to do like a strip is where you would just have the kick and the bass playing with a hook on top typically. That is a very typical way to step the energy down into the basement, okay? And that's where you'll have that extra kind of bridge section between the drop and then stepping down into the basement. But here we don't have that. We're just going right into the basement, and I call that a cliff dive, okay? So this first section, let's call this is just your basement, and this is a chill section, okay? CLT, chill, lift, and trans. And so this is a chill section. I'll just go like this. Okay, and then what we have is a lift, okay? And so why is that a lift? Because we're getting the full presentation of the sounds again. Over here, we don't have the full presentation. We have that kind of underwater feel, filtering, not all the sounds are present, you know. You could feel that's just supposed to be a chill section. You're not doing anything. You're kind of in this purgatory area. But here, the level of energy is definitely higher, right? And then, so the lift is we're getting the full presentation of the sounds, but the focus is just that vocal, okay? And so here we have the lift, and that's all we really need to label there, okay? And then finally, here in the last 8 bars, MBB, we have the build, which is to say the trance, okay? Those are the same thing, but when I'm talking about the main break and build, the way I like to think about it is, okay, you're going to have a step down section typically. That'll be a what's it called? God, strip section or a cliff dive. In this case, we have the cliff dive. So we cliff dive down into the basement, then we have a lift, and then we have your build. Okay, so those are the things. You have that step down, which is either going to be an entire section like a strip, or it'll be a cliff dive like what we have in this track. So we have that step down, and then we have the chill, which is the basement. We have the lift, and then we have the build / trans. So so the main break and build can really be broken down into those 4 elements. Okay, that step down, which is going to be your, I'll say it again, your strip or your cliff dive. You'll have the basement, which is your chill section. You'll have the lift, which is typically going to focus on the hook. Okay, you're going to bring that hook back and just put it right in front, and you start to maybe slowly build things underneath the presentation of that vocal. And then finally, the 4th element is your build trans. That's where you just go, you check off the boxes of the 5 build boxes: rep, roll, rise, grow, and pipo. Okay, so that is, and so this is a very clean CLT story: chill, lift, and trans, basement, lift, and then build. Okay. And there we go. And so then finally we get into HD2, which is basically the same thing as HD1. Let's just make sure and just check that it really is, and we'll just look at this. But of course, with the HD1, HD2, the A section is going to be the vocal, just like in HD1, and the B section is just going to be the sound design. So let's go ahead and give it a listen. All right, so you can hear all of that. We have everything. The bass opens as a trans element. We have that snare roll, which is kind of like that edit element. We have, and trans element, obviously we have the vocals, and we have the flute kind of opening up underneath. So chill, lift, and trans. Let's just quickly compare the vibe and the feel and the sounds here. And so you see there's definitely an elevation in the drums here. I'm not going to try to pinpoint exactly what's going on, but more percussion, more high frequency drums. It sounds like there's definitely a lot more percussion going on in kind of the mid-range, the low end of the mid-range as well. Anyway, but just an elevation. When there's something over and above in HD2, in HD1, that's an elevation. When there's something over and above in MBB over break 1, that's an elevation too. Because you can always ask yourself, in what way is the build here elevated above the build in break 1? And so this one checks all those 5 boxes of the build. This doesn't need to, okay? And so whatever those boxes that are missing here, that's going to be the elevation here in this build over this build. Okay, so just thinking in terms of elevation, both between the break sections, how is this build or break elevated from this one? How is this drop elevated in some way from this one? And you can see in this case, it's very subtle. It's very subtle. It doesn't need to be anything earth-shattering. It certainly can be if you want it to be, but it doesn't need to be. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's listen to the B. Of course, we know this B section is just going to be the sound design. All right, we'll get the same vocals here, I bet, and then we'll lift in with the, we'll get a lift and trans here at the end. That lift's going to be that octave, and then the trans, of course, is probably going to be maybe a snare roll, a bigger edit. You can see this is a pretty big edit section here. Look at that. That's 4 bars. It looks like it. So let's go ahead and listen to the end here. And we get a new trance element, which is that little vocal repetition that we had over here. So a bit of a callback there. Okay, so we have two different drum fills. That's cool. So this one, you get that playing on the left. This one's going to be playing on the right. So slightly different sound. Can't tell if they're just the same thing. Just one's pitched and one's and they're panned in different ways. But then here we don't really have. Okay, this one we just get that typical build. So it's interesting. He's just kind of switching up where these what are they called? The drum fills are playing. So that's interesting. But one thing I do like is that man, he's putting those exciting fills right at the exciting parts of the drop right here. Right, this is the most exciting part of the drop, really, because this is where we transition into the build of. I'm sorry, not the build, the B section with the sound design. And then here is where we're coming out of the vocal. That's very exciting. And then here we have another big drum fill. And we don't need a crazy big drum fill as we start to settle down into the outro. So this is a little bit more minor, okay? I'm not sure how conscious the producer was of placing these drum fills in that way, but it certainly makes sense when you think about the energy levels of the drop and the energy levels of the drum fills themselves. So... Okay, so outro, we're just going to get the beats, we're going to have the bass line, and then we just have this delay on top. But this is going to be pretty much what I call a boring outro, which is where you just have the groove, and then you take away some element of the groove in the back half. Often that's going to be the bass taken away, or you're going to high pass something. So let's just listen quickly. Again, just remembering not to overcomplicate the intro and the outro, and listening gives us that lesson explicitly. Just wanted to put the snare roll over here. We have a snare roll over here. So he's just repeating the types of transition that he's had all along just here in the outro. As we go to the B of the outro, we're transitioning just like we have everywhere else pretty much in the track. So... All right, cool. So one thing I hope that got across here is just the simplicity of it. And just to reiterate what that is, we have the HD2 formula, which is flawlessly executed. We have intro, bass drop, break 1, HD1, MBB, HD2, and outro. Even the section lengths are perfect, okay? 16, 16, 16, 30. Okay, like ideally it would be 16, 16, 16, 32, 32, 32, 32. But the reason why the main break and build is 24 bars is because we cliff dive down into a clean CLT story. So when you do the cliff dive into a clean CLT story, then it becomes 16, 16, 16, 32, 24, 32, 32. Okay, so again, flawless execution of the HD2 formula when you have a 24-bar main break and build, which is typically just going to be a cliff dive from HD1. Okay, so that's that higher level. Going down a level of analysis, we have then the clean AB stories. We saw clean AB with the intro, bass drop, break 1, and HD1. This is not necessarily a clean AB, this is a clean CLT story. And then with HD1, we have the clean AB, and the outro even has a clean AB with the groove right here and then a high pass bass at the end. Okay, so that's the clean AB structure across the sections. And then with the CLT stories, just focusing on the most important parts, even the break, this guy, we have just basically chill and then lift trans. That's almost always going to be, that is the perfectly safe way to go. Okay, chill, lift trans, chill, lift trans. Okay, chill, lift trans, chill, lift trans, chill, lift trans. There you go, done. Okay, so clean CLT story. So like just thinking about things in that higher level way just really helps guide you on how you can develop the track. Everyone's so worried about like what they're going to do in their arrangement at the granular level. Like, am I going to have this sound interact with the other one? But if you zoom out and just kind of think about the A-B structures of the CLT stories, then it can kind of guide and inform how you're going to have your hooks laid out over the track and how they can potentially interact with each other. You know, and I think it makes it a lot easier, and the end product, it makes it easier insofar as the arrangement process, but it makes it way cleaner and easier to listen to for the listener, which is going to be good for you because then more tracks will get signed and they'll jump into the charts and more people will like them. And that's always a nice validation there. So, yeah, so what else did I want to cover? One last thing I wanted to cover was the arrangement math. Okay, again, arrangement math or setup math for me is where you have bass drop plus break 1 equals HD1. We saw that here. Okay, that checks the box. Another thing that I like to look for is the story of the track. The story of the track for me is HD1, MBB, HD2. And the story here is so simple. It's a perfect story. Like for the HD2 formula story is very simple. It goes like this. Okay, you give them the hook, then you build tension, and then you pay that off. You pay that tension off. So hook, build, payoff. And if you want to know where that comes from Stephen Pressfield, who writes about storytelling. And I read his book one time, and I was blown away by how simple like a three-act structure can be in like movies. And I was thinking, man, that actually works with production if you think about it. And so that's where I got the idea from, is Stephen Pressfield, where you have hook, you have build, and then you have payoff. And so the way that I like to think about it for music is Act 1 here, which is HD1, is a hook. You just give it to them, right? That you just give it to them. And then in Act 2 here, which is the build, I like to think of it as take it away. Okay, so here you're giving everybody what they want. Here you're taking it away. You're taking the groove away. You're taking the full presentation of the hooks away. And then, of course, you're hitting them with that build right there to anticipate that you're going to bring it back. And then you deliver on that promise. You bring it back. And so the simple story of HD2 is give it to them, take it away, give it back. And that's exactly what's going on here. Even to the extent that this is a sandwich where HD2 and HD1 are pretty much the same. So they are literally giving it back with a few minor elevations in HD2 over HD1. So those are just, man, when you can check those higher level boxes, that's where your tracks start to just resonate with people, because you're telling something that they can follow, they can understand, they enjoy it. You're meeting their structural expectations. It's easy for the brain. You're not confusing anybody. And so that's really cool. I hope that was interesting. I have this doc where I kind of basically wrote down everything that I just mentioned, and you can see how I just kind of break down the elements of this track, CLT stories, the A-B structures kind of describe. I even describe the simple HD2 story here at the end here. But if you want to look at this doc as a reference, you certainly can. I'll put the link below the video. And that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Please leave some comments down below. I love interacting about this stuff. I find it fascinating. I hope you do too. And if you have any questions, leave them down below. And I definitely want to clarify any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.